Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the meeting of the Wellington Shire Council on this Tuesday, the 4th of February 2020. Members of the public gallery should note that Council records and publishes Council's meetings via YouTube to enhance the accessibility of Council meetings to the broader Wellington community. These recordings are also archived and may be published on Council's website for viewing by the public or used for publicity or information purposes. At the appropriate time during the meeting, members of the gallery may address the Council, at which time their image, comments or submissions will be recorded. Members of the public who are not in attendance at the Council meeting but who wish to communicate with the Council via the webcasting chat room should lodge their questions or comments early in the meeting to ensure that their submissions can be dealt with at the end of the meeting. Please could gallery visitors and councillors ensure that mobile phones and other electronic devices are turned off or in silent mode for the duration of the meeting. And if we could all rise for the statement of acknowledgement and the prayer. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, the Gunai people, and pay respects to their elders past and present. Almighty God, we ask your blessing upon the Wellington Shire Council, its councillors, officers, staff and their families. We pray for your guidance in our decisions so that the true good of the Wellington Shire Council may result to the benefit of all residents and community groups. Amen. Thank you. And can I take this opportunity at the opening of the meeting to acknowledge with regret the sad passing of a staff member, Mr Brendan Peters, the coordinator of theatre operations at the Wedge, unfortunately passed away suddenly, and we share our thoughts with his colleagues, the councillors and the broader Wellington community. He'll be sadly missed. Do we have any apologies, CEO?
No.
Any declarations of conflicts of interest? No. If not, we'll move on to the minutes of the previous council meeting. Councillor Bye.
Thanks, Mayor. I move the Council adopt the minutes and resolutions of the Ordinary Council meeting of the 17th of December 2019.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Ma. Is that motion opposed? If not, the motion is carried. Any business arising from previous meetings, CEO? We move on then to acceptance of late items. Councillor Stevens.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I would like to move that Council accept late item C2.4, Instrument of Appointment and Authorisation under the Planning and Environment Act 1987 for consideration, or the correct, whatever words you think are appropriate. Thank you,
I think that sounds appropriate. Do we have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Bye. Is that motion opposed? If not, the motion is carried. Do you wish to proceed with the late item now,
yes,
Councillor Stevens?
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. With your leave, I would like to move that Council, in the exercise of the powers conferred by Section 224 of the Local Government Act 1989, the Act, and the other legislation referred to in the attached S11A Instrument of Appointment and Authorisation, the instrument, resolve that 1. Council Officer Brent McAllister be appointed and authorised as set out in the instrument as provided at Attachment 1, and 2. The instrument be signed and sealed by the Chief Executive Officer.
Second for that motion, Councillor Ripper, I believe. Is that motion opposed? If not, the motion is carried. Councillor Stevens, do you wish to speak to that item?
I don't know if I need to. I think it's
now,
very self-explanatory.
Well, I might just simply take the opportunity then to welcome Brent McAllister in the role of General Manager Development to Wellington Shire, making the move to Wellington from Tamworth or places north of here. So I hope this is an enjoyable and rewarding experience for you. So welcome aboard, Brent. Moving on to item A7, notices of motion. I think it's you again, Councillor Stevens.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Just have to get my thoughts in order here. Look, Mr Mayor, just to clarify, the original notice of motion that was set out in the agenda has been slightly altered. The intent is still exactly the same, and therefore I propose to move that the Mayor write to the Minister for Public Transport, the Honourable Melissa Horne MP, requesting her to actively support the importance of rural students having access to affordable travel to Melbourne to participate in activities in Victoria's capital city. But the Mayor highlights in a letter to the Minister for Public Transport that a group of 60 students and teachers from Yarram Secondary College have recently been refused access to V-Line buses to travel to Melbourne, and Council believes such actions are discriminating against rural students, especially those from low socio-economic families living in drought-declared areas, placing undue hardship on small rural schools to fund private buses where there is no access to public transport or that access is withdrawn, reinforcing the perceived inequality of transport services provision to rural communities, especially to young people, and that the Mayor requests the Minister for Public Transport to conduct a review into processes that allocate V-Line bus services to rural and remote schools in order to ensure that no school is disadvantaged or refused reasonable requests for group travel.
Thanks, Councillor Stevens, and the variation is of minor nature, and I'm more than happy to accept it. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Crosley. Is that motion opposed? If not, the motion is carried. Councillor Stevens.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr Mayor, and thank you, councillors, for your support, because this is a very important matter for any school that needs access to V-Line bus services to take larger groups of their students to anywhere, and particularly Melbourne. Mr Danny O'Brien, the member for Gippsland South, has actually made representations on 2 occasions to the Minister, the Honourable Melissa Horne, and the second letter that he has just received back, I think, shows the lack of knowledge of the Minister in relation to this subject. And I'd just like to quote, if I may, Mr Mayor, from part of this letter. The proposal, and this relates to the proposal that students be allowed to travel in larger groups. Your proposal for an extra bus to be provided on a particular service that has an advanced group booking would require buses to be on standby for these bookings. I found that paragraph to be incredible, Mr Mayor, because if the 312 train on the Traralgon line from Melbourne to Traralgon breaks down at Pakenham, V-Line will suddenly, what's the word I'm looking for? Materialise, thank you, I was going to say metabolise. Materialise, thank you very much, Councillor Ripper. I'm so stunned that I can't even know the word. Will materialise half a dozen buses to transport those passengers. And I know for a fact there was a gentleman who had the contract many years ago to provide emergency bus services on metro rail lines. And this gentleman had a yard full of about 100 buses that he could produce at an instant's notice to actually provide a service. The current pre-booking system requires the school to book at least a fortnight in advance if they want to book a larger group. And at the moment, the Yarram Secondary College, if they have to have a large group travel to Traralgon to catch a train, needs to spend something like $1,000 to hire a bus. And this is just incredible, in my opinion, and this is why I raised a notice of motion. And so I thank Council for their support, and hopefully we can get some common sense to apply, and we can get some benefit for our rural students. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Stevens. A very valid point. Well done. Moving on to item A8, receiving of petitions or joint letters. None, CEO?
None, me.
Item A9, do we have any invited addresses, presentations or acknowledgements? And I don't believe so. Any questions on notice, CEO?
None, me.
Moving on to report of delegates. Councillor Marr.
I move that the following delegates report be noted.
Seconded by Councillor Rossetti. Is it opposed? If not, carried. Councillor Marr.
On the 29th of January 2020, the CEO and the General Manager of Community and Culture and myself met with the Minister of Local Government and Small Business, Adam Somyurek, Judy O'Connell, Small Business Commissioner, Tim Simmons, Small Business Victoria, Tim McAuliffe, Regional Development Victoria of Gippsland, Graham Emerson, Local Government Victoria, and Sharon Fisher of Bushfire Recovery Victoria, which is a new appointment based on what has been going on with the bushfires recently. The meeting with the Minister and his advisors was a positive one. They were keen to hear our views and experiences on the bushfires that affected East Gippsland and Wellington Shire over the last 6 weeks. Whilst the direct impact of bushfire has been minimal to the Wellington Shire communities, the economic impact has been vast. Strategies were raised with the Minister for tourism recovery as the Gippsland brand, we can all acknowledge, has been damaged. Actions to address a tourism approach both regionally and locally, including tourist routes, was outlined. Support from the metro area will be imperative, and there has already been some great stories within our local communities regarding this. Added to the impacts are the psychosocial effects upon our communities across the Shire, which has also been of great concern. There has been much anger and frustration expressed towards government and its agencies, particularly with respect to fuel management, climate change and the impacts of both. Discussions were raised with the Minister on the social recovery and the resourcing to address these issues, including the difficult conversations that need to be had with our communities who are living in a changing climate and landscape. We all need to feel safe where we live, and this messaging and actioning needs to come from all levels of government. The continuing burden of emergency management also needs to be ongoing and not just addressed during the heat of an emergency. However, it was with much pride that we were able to outline the support Wellington Shire has provided to the East Gippsland Shire and how local government as a whole has been very supportive. And may I also just add with that the communities. Wellington Shire staff have provided 24 hours support over a 12-day period, documenting 1,615 people through the relief centres at both the Sale Baptist Church and the Gippsland Regional Sporting Complex. Wellington is still providing ongoing support to East Gippsland, with several staff seconded continuing their emergency management work. Many East Gippsland staff, as well as some of our very own Wellington Shire staff, have been directly impacted from the effects of this fire, and our thoughts are with you all at this time. The Minister and his advisors understood the issues and committed to take our message back to government, and have undertaken to continue provision of the appropriate support for our communities, and we thank them for that.
Thanks, Councillor Marr. And thank you for, in fact, being involved with that meeting, because on that very same day, on the basis that you can only be at one place at one time, I spent my 29th of January in the smoky capital of Canberra. That was an experience, and to meet with a round table at an invitation which came from an organisation called Biz Rebuild, which is an initiative of the Business Council of Australia, with the agenda not coming out to quite late. So in the first instance, we'd been invited to a meeting to be chaired by Sir Peter Cosgrove, along with representatives of the Business Council, Andrew Colvin, who heads up the national recovery effort, and a range of people from across Australia. Well, we waited for Parliament House to actually open. 9 o'clock means 9 o'clock in Canberra. I sat outside and chatted with Michael Pengilly, the Mayor of Kangaroo Island. And that was a sobering 5 minutes or so as we talked about, among other things, 100,000 sheep loss, 50% of the land mass completely gone, their tourism bookings having collapsed, and among other things, on the back of the coronavirus, the fact that their lobster industry, in fact, has collapsed as well. And that kind of set the scene. We had the opportunity then to hear from John White, the Mayor of East Gippsland, who calmly and quietly described what's happened in their part of the world and what we see as the spillover effect in Wellington from the disastrous fire season they've had. So he talked about the fire. Talked about the highway closure, the collapse of the timber industry, or the potential collapsing of the timber industry as a result of state government changes, a mini flood, and then one of the things that I hadn't thought about, but just the additional impact on agriculture to get their product to market. So, for example, the increased turnaround times to get product to the Sydney marketplace. And as we all know, the issue of tourism, which had been devastated during the peak season. The concern and the flavour of the meeting focused upon impending business failure as a result of a cash flow crisis, as businesses in fact experienced the biggest downturn in their seasonal trading period. I spoke with another mayor from New South Wales who told me that they hadn't recognised the value of tourism, that is their passing trade, until the road was cut at either end of their municipality. And so these stories are just constant from one end of this country to another. We had some concerns, I had some concerns, in regard to what I'd loosely describe as Brand Australia, and what's happened to Brand Australia, which has now happened to Brand Gippsland, and how we will deal with that for the future. I'm hoping to see some improvement in the strategic direction, but I didn't come away from that meeting with that feeling. I think that we need to do everything we can to keep the federal government and others informed about the actions that we need to take to get Australia back to where it needs to be following the devastation of these current bushfires. So thanks again, Councillor Maffra, dealing with it locally. And to our staff, can I reinforce again the comments that you made? We had the opportunity earlier today to deal with in detail and have a discussion around how the people of Wellington, both our people, our staff, and the Wellington community have risen to this occasion. We are well served with people who in fact are incredibly professional, but whose hearts are in the right places at the same time. So to our own staff and to the people of Wellington, congratulations for all that you've done so far in this space. We might move on. Sorry, Councillor Crossley. I guess it would be appropriate that you can do that.
Yes. I move that the Mayor's report be noted, so it be entered into the minutes. Thank you.
Seconder for that, Councillor Ma. It's not opposed, the motion is carried. Thank you. Moving on to... Do you want to speak? Do you want to speak, Councillor Crossley? I just get a bit excited sometimes. Moving on to item C 1.1. December 2019 Council Performance Report. Councillor Stevens.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I would like to move that Council receive and note the December 2019 Council Performance Report as attached.
Seconder for that motion. Councillor Hull. Is that motion opposed? If not, the motion is carried. Councillor Stevens.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I'll be less passionate in discussing the Council Performance Report, although it really is very impressive and exciting in the fact that we're on track for a very positive outcome for the full year from a financial and operational point of view. I would just like to make a couple of observations that, of course, one of them is it was very pleasing to note that we've saved something in the order of $400,000 on our workers' compensation premiums. And that really is a very positive sign to me of excellent work by the council staff, and perhaps the manager of corporate services to pass on to the appropriate staff our thanks, because that means that we are doing a really outstanding job of working with our staff and managing any work care claims, and it's not that difficult to drop the bundle in that area, and that would be extremely expensive for the council bottom line. It's also interesting to note that, of course, as seems to have happened in the last couple of years, our grant income being received either before or after the end of a financial year has tended to skew our budget. But that, I think, is something that just seems to be part of the norm these days. And the only other thing I'd like to note is that we have a very strong cash position we have something like $90 million available for term deposits. It's a bit unfortunate that we're only getting, I think, about 1.6% interest. I can remember the days when you could have gotten 19 to 20% interest would have made a little bit of positive activity for our bottom line. Probably wouldn't have been so flash if you had a mortgage. But anyway, that's a whole different story. I suppose councils that have got cash and self-funded retirees are all suffering from low interest rates at the moment, Mr. Mayor. But having said that, the performance report is showing that we're well on track for another excellent financial year in 2019-2020. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Stevens. If we could move on to item C2.1, Assembly of Councillors. Councillor Bye.
Thanks, Mayor. I move the council note and receive the attached Assembly of Councillor records for the period 11th of December 2019 to the 25th of December 2019.
Second of that motion, Councillor Marr. That motion opposed? If not, the motion is carried. Councillor Bye. Move on. Moving on to item C2.2, the Audit and Risk Committee minutes. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I seem to be having a fair bit to say. I'd like to move that Council receive and note the minutes in brief attachment 1 and the confidential attachment at item F 1.1 Audit and Risk Committee minutes of the 16th of December 2019 and plus point 2 as set out in the Council agenda. Thank you.
Second of that motion, Councillor Bye. Is that motion opposed? If not, the motion is carried. Councillor Stevens.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I'd just like to note the fact that at the Audit and Risk Committee meeting on the 16th of December, there were a couple of old stages there, being you and me, Mr. Mayor, and we actually welcomed 2 new independent members, Kia Cashman and Frank Evans, to the committee, and it was good to see them on board and welcome to their first meeting. And of course, it also meant that we had to appoint a new independent chairperson, and so it was pleasing that we actually appointed our remaining independent member, Mr. Chris Badger, to the position of independent chairperson. The discussion was very, very useful. There was I think further confirmation that our last year's external audit report was very successful, and we received ticks in all areas there. And we had an internal audit report as well, which was received and was also, as most of our internal audit reports are, show that we're basically running our operations quite successfully. Other matters were of a routine nature. And I think it's reasonable to say that that all our audit and risk matters are all in a good place, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Stevens. If we could move on to item C2.3, Election Caretaker Period Policy Review. Councillor Hole.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I'm going to move that Council approve the attached Election Caretaker Period Policy.
Second of that motion, Councillor McCubbin. Is that motion opposed? If not, the motion is carried. Councillor Hole.
Yeah, thanks again, Mayor. This policy is the current policy under the Local Government Act of 1989, in that which requires the review of any policy no later than 12 months before the next election period. And we've now started our 4th year of this council, and so our term of expiry comes up in October, and so there's been some exciting time between now and then. The ratification behind this policy is that it endorses the caretaker period, which limits some actions that council can endorse. One of those is the new policies or new decisions that could affect a future council. They're not allowed to do that. And a second issue is to ensure that public resources are not used in election campaigns. The caretaker period extends from midnight, on which the nominations close, until 6 p.m. on the election day, and that's approximately 32 days from memory. However, There may be some alterations when the new Local Government Act is passed by Parliament in February later on this month, and when the resolutions are passed in March, and that is built into this document that we will automatically adopt the new regulations. So the policy is well documented, and the details are quite specific, and there shouldn't be any problems down the road having to front up to any of the local government authorities as to why you didn't do what you shouldn't have done.
Thanks, Councillor Hull. I've relinquished my membership of the Gun Club. Moving on to item C 4.1, road closure, part of unused government road east of Riversdale Road at Maffra. Councillor Ripper.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move that the property owners be advised in writing that they are required to enter into a Section 173 agreement under the Planning and Environment Act 1987 on each of the abutting titles to the road to be closed, entering into an agreement that within 3 months of the road sales process being completed, that they will consolidate the road titles into the abutting land prior to consent being provided to close the roads. And once the Section 173 agreements have been placed on titles, Council agrees to do the following. 2. Pursuant to the Section 349 of the Land Act 1958, Council resolves to give its concurrence to the closing of sections of Government Road adjoining Lot 1, PS 547, 886 and Lot 2, PS 518813 in the parish of Tenamba and shown in red on the attached plans. 3. Pursuant to Section 400 of the Land Act 1958, Council gives notice that the portions of Government Road adjoining Lot 1 PS 547 886 and Lot 2 PS 518813 in the parish of Tenamba are considered to not be required for public traffic and therefore an unused road.
Second to that motion, Councillor Marr. Is that motion opposed? If not, the motion is carried. Councillor Ripper.
Thank you, Mayor. This is, belongs to DELP, however, they must come to Council for the road closures to confirm that the sections of Government Road are not required for public traffic, and these are currently being used for farming, and they will be joined together, and the farmer will be able to farm without having a road in that area. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Ripper. Moving on to item C 4.2, application for unused road licence in the parish of Gifford at Gifford. Councillor Marr.
I move that pursuant to Section 400 of the Land Act 1958, Council give notice that Government Road south of CA3, Section B, parish of Gifford, is not required for public traffic and is therefore an unused road.
Second to that motion, Councillor Stevens. Is that motion opposed? If not, the motion is carried. Councillor Marr.
Just briefly, the owner has made an application on behalf of DELP to obtain this unused road grazing licence, and this has actually been fenced into their property for the last 19 years.
Thanks, Councillor Marr. Moving on to item C 4.3, Maffra Streetscape Renewal Works, Johnson Street North, contract 2020-045. Councillor Crosley.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that 1. Council adopt the recommendations contained in the attached confidential tender evaluation report at item F1.2 of the Council meeting agenda for Maffra Streetscape Renewal Works, Johnson Street North, contract 2020-045, and 2. The information contained in the confidential document item F1.2 of the Council meeting agenda and designated under Section 77 Clause 2C of the Local Government Act 1989 as confidential by the General Manager Built and Natural Environment on the 21st of January 2020 because it relates to the following grounds under the Section 89(2) of the Local Government Act 1989. D. Contractual matters be designated confidential information under Section 77 Clause 2B of the Local Government Act 1989, except that once this recommendation has been adopted, the name of the successful tender can be public.
Second of that motion, Councillor Bye. Is that motion opposed? If not, the motion is carried. Councillor Crosley.
Thank you. This is the second stage of this very important streetscape renewal. Maffra is our very important second city of Wellington, and we've held off this second stage in the light of the Christmas period and the heavy traffic period for shoppers, and to make sure there was the least amount of disruption to the Main Street traders there in the community. The southern side, southern end has been completed, and the concrete works of the western end, I drove through there yesterday, it was all looking great. This is the tender to actually now complete the northern end of that streetscape renewal. But just to reassure the traders that the areas that are still impacted on works that are ongoing, we'll be waiting to those finish before we start the others. So it's been well received, this process, and it'll be spruced up for Maffra's Main Street. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Crosley, and I'm pleased to announce that the successful tenderer as JW Volk Proprietary Limited. Moving on to item C5.1, Gippsland Art Gallery Advisory Group Minutes. Councillor Rossetti.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that Council receive the minutes of the Gippsland Art Gallery Advisory Group meeting held on 2nd December 2019.
Second to that motion, Councillor Crosley. Is that motion opposed? If not, the motion is carried. Councillor Rossetti.
Thanks, Mayor. I just want to make mention of some things that have happened since that meeting on 2nd of December. The Art Gallery Director, Simon Gregg, was very keen to do something for the fires we've had coming through. So they've actually organised an art aid auction in a very short space of time. In fact, it's been so successful in their call out to artists to donate works that they've actually had to close the donation process because it's been incredibly successful with the amount of artworks that have been donated. They're at capacity. They've had places for people to drop off, just to show you the level of organisation. Artists were able to drop off their pieces at Bairnsdale, Yarragon, Meenian, Bayswater, Brunswick, Tullamarine, Epping, Melbourne, St Kilda and West Melbourne, for instance. He's just pulled in these sorts of places to organise.
Lucky Star impersonation.
It is, and it's... but the launch, Mayor, is on the 14th of February, and all the works will be exhibited between the 15th of February and the 15th of March. And the auction will actually be at the Wedge on the 15th of March. I think it'll be quite more details come later on. But all praise to Simon and his team, because they've been able to pull together what is an incredible event and an amount of donated goods. I think Bob Geldof would have struggled with this sort of a routine. Band Aid, let's had a few people singing. I mean, here we're going to have so many things going on. It's going to be quite extraordinary. But it's amazing to see how many in our communities really are responding in whatever way they can to the fires. And the arts community here are doing exactly that. So I'm looking forward to that, the 14th of February for the launch, the exhibition between the 15th of February and the 15th of March, and then the auction on the 15th of March. There'll be plenty of great items to purchase, and of course the money will be going to a great cause, being the fire recovery.
Thanks, Councillor Rossetti. And again, it just reflects the efforts that all of our people just go to as a part of that hearts and heads thing that we've got going on here. So amazing, well done. Move on to item C5.2, Braggalong Recreation Reserve Committee of Management memberships. Councillor Ripper.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move that Council appoint the nominated representative to the vacant committee positions as detailed in the attached confidential report for the Braggalong Recreation Reserve Committee of Management for a 3-year period. 2. The information contained in the attached document, item F1.3, Braggalong Recreation Reserve Committee membership of this council meeting agenda and designated under section 77 clause 2C of the Local Government Act 1989 as confidential by the General Manager, Community and Culture on the 20th of January 2020 because it relates to the following grounds under section 89(2) of the Local Government Act 1989. H. Any other matter which council or special committee considers would prejudice the council or any person be designated confidential information under section 77 clause 2B of the Local Government Act 1989, except that once this recommendation has been adopted, the name of the successful member can be made public.
Second of that motion, Councillor Hall. Is that motion opposed? If not, the motion is carried. Councillor Ripper. No. Moving on to item C5.3, Braggalong Recreation Reserve Committee of Management minutes. Councillor Ripper.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move that Council receive the minutes from the Braggalong Recreation Reserve Committee of Management General Meeting held 25th of November 2019 and the minutes from the annual general meeting held on 3rd of December 2019 and approve the Braggalong Recreation Reserve Committee of Management's rules for the reserve, Attachment A, as adopted by the committee at the annual general meeting held on the 3rd of December 2019.
Second to that motion, Councillor Crossley. That motion opposed? If not, the motion is carried. Councillor Ripper. Moving on to item C5.4, Cameron Sporting Complex Committee of Management minutes. Councillor Hull.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move the Council receive the minutes from the Cameron Sporting Complex Committee of Management's general meeting held on the 7th of October 2019.
Seconded by Councillor Ripper. Is that opposed? If not, the motion is carried. Councillor Hull.
Yeah, pretty good set of minutes as they normally present to us. And a couple of the highlights that I've pulled out of it is in relation to the gymnastics centre, which we all know is one of the strongest clubs in Gippsland, and it's a regional facility. But over there, they conducted the Wellington Schools competition where 15 schools compete. They ran the regional championships for level 3 to 6. They ran the Women's Gippsland Championship for levels 3 to 10. And they had competitors from Burngath to Tarrogin, Warragul, Banstar. They got some big comps coming up. And all the other sports also gave an excellent report from their clubs. But the exciting thing, of course, is the development of the extension of the stadium and the provision of the new basketball court. It's worth a visit to go over and drive and see the work that's being done and how quickly it's being done. Everybody that's dealing with the contractor speaks very highly, but then again he's got a little terrier on his wheel who looks, from our perspective, it has an ongoing dialogue to make sure everything's on time, and we were assured the other night that everything is on time and is on budget. And so the long-term reaction, where we thought we were going to have to shift all the basketball games and gymnastics out of the building, the contractor has been working with Wellington Shire and with the clubs, and with a little bit of skill, I suppose, all games and all gymnastics will continue to stay there, but in a somewhat different format as to what they used to. But everybody's looking forward to the finished article. Those who've had the opportunity to come in and see the work are getting very excited. And even though we're still probably 8 or 10 months away before we have the big opening and the champagne out on the basketball, what it's going to be.
So do you want to write to the auditor?
Sorry, a cup of tea, I was told.
I just wondered if you wanted to write to don't want to write to Vargo to seek clearance on that one, do you, Councillor Hull? If we move on to item C5.5, Maffra Recreation Reserve Committee of Management minutes. Councillor Ripper.
Thank you again, Mayor. I'd like to move the Council receive the minutes from the Maffra Recreation Reserve Committee of Management General Meeting held on the 2nd of December 2019.
Second of that, Councillor Crossley. Is that opposed? If not, carried. Councillor Ripper? Done. Okay. No urgent business, CEO?
No, nothing in the chat room, Mayor.
Thanks so much. If we could let's move on. We're on to gallery comments. Let's make these points slowly and clearly. Gallery comments are an opportunity for members of the public to raise any particular matters they wish. This allows those in the gallery to speak directly to councillors, but it is not a forum designed for open discussion or debate. We will listen respectfully to what you have to say and make the commitment that if your query requires a written response, we'll advise you that a response will be forthcoming and a copy of that response will be circulated to all councillors. This is not a forum for members of the public to lodge complaints against individuals, including councillors and staff, particularly as that individual gets no public right of reply to any matter raised. We take complaints seriously and in line with the guidance from the Victorian Ombudsman and the local government inspectorate. We request that any specific complaint against an individual be put in writing. This way your concern can be properly dealt with while ensuring fairness to all parties concerned. If you wish to speak, remind you that this part of the meeting is being recorded and broadcast on our website. Council's official minutes will record that you have spoken to Council and the subject you spoke to Council about. It will not record specific comments. We ask you to state your name in full, where you're from, and you have 3 minutes. And I just remind the gallery that in fact that this process is under the control of the Chair, and if I give direction from the Chair, I expect those directions to be actioned immediately without question. So does anyone wish to speak to Council?
Circular put out, I noticed early in the meeting you said acceptance of late items by Councillor Stevens. I'm just wondering if that was because I did give a note to council officers today, and a council employee was going to give them out to all the councillors. I don't know if that is right or not, if you've got a copy of a letter. Okay, thank you. Now, is it possible, and I don't know why that could not be discussed, I mean, we had heard about this climate change rally today. People rang me to go in it, and I said, no, I don't think it's... we know there's some climate change, but nowhere near as much climate change as some people are claiming. And I'm talking about the reasons for all these bushfires. Totally unnecessary. And what a waste of life. This is a bloody disgrace to, well, all of us. And I suppose some blame's got to go to the local councillors for a start. But it's a job I just see a councillor's job to see what's going on in the community, not in the towns and on the edges of the road and easy places, but out in the bush. Out in the bush where it happens. Look what happened to me trying to do the right thing, clear that road down there, and because the modern state government legislation made me waste a lot of time and money, which is absolutely ridiculous. I think people should be ashamed of themselves for not standing up for what was right at the time. I was in a hard spot. Now, I'm not complaining about so much. I'm just wanting you people suggesting other people to be fair dinkum and realise what's caused these fires in the main. It'd be good if you could have the discussion, now that I set it open, because I think it's a fuel build-up. Legislation, council will not, legislation's stopping people from clearing fence lines, burning off, because we know fire brigade put them out, do the right thing in the fire and they come and put it out. But I think I've said enough, but I'd like to see some action here today. It's bloody important for the rest. Now, if we do something here, in this, we haven't been affected by fire. We're so lucky and blessed, I guess. But I'd like something to happen today. Sow the seed. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Anyone else wish to speak to council?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, for the opportunity. On the 2nd of January, I sent you an email titled Raymond Street.
Your name and your
Oh, sorry, yeah, it's here. My name is Robert Stewart. I walk Raymond Street on a very regular basis, and over a period of time it has got to me. What has got to be is the empty shops that are an absolute blot on the street. Do take a walk, please, and see for yourself dirty windows, cobwebs, paper, plastic, used to blanket out the windows now slipped or fallen, junk mail under the door, old signage no longer relevant. If you want an example of what can be done by a proactive shop owner, there's a shop across from Aldi's which is relocated, and that owner has removed all signage, painted the shop. It's all fresh, ready for a new tenant. The council has access to the owners of these properties via the Shire Rate Office, and a notice should be sent to these shop owners to take action to re-clean these places, make them presentable, because I'm sure if we don't look after our nature strip, we get a message from the Shire to do so. And I'm very passionate about this because I spent a lot of my life working in Raymond Street, and Raymond Street's part of me. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert. Did I respond to your letter?
No.
That surprised me. I do recall getting that, and I'll follow up why, in fact, why there wasn't a response.
Sure, that's all right. No problem.
But there should have been, and I don't know why that didn't happen, but we will follow that up as a matter of urgency.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anything further in regard to the gallery? If not, Councillor Stevens, I think we might be in your hands.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. We need to move the motion to go into closed session, so I'll move that the meeting be closed to the public pursuant to section 89, subsection 2 of the Local Government Act 1989 to consider A, personnel matters.
Second to that motion, Councillor Rossetti. The motion opposed. If not, the motion is carried and we moved into closed session. Thank you very much. So if gallery could in fact leave the room, that would be appreciated.
Service.